What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics, and today we got a top 11 James Bond songs brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Evan David. Thank you, Evan David, for all you bring. Thank you to all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. If you ever watched one of Evan David's patron selections, you know that he gives great backgrounds into all the songs and to the artists themselves. This time it's a little different because it's a smorgasbord of artists, but let's see what Evan David has to say about this list. He says, rock and roll legend has it that what we now know as James Bond music first began a full 60 years ago, back in June of 1962, when arranger-producer John Barry was assigned to revamp the main theme music of Dr. No, the upcoming first movie to be based upon the fictional adventures of Ian Fleming's already wildly popular master spy, Agent James Bond 007 of the British Secret Service, whom Fleming had created nearly a decade earlier in the pages of the first Bond novel, of course, Casino Royale, published in 1953. By this point, although accounts vary, it seems that while Dr. No's originally assigned composer Monty Norman had already completed the rest of the film's often Jamaican-inspired score, he had been struggling somewhat to create a suitably compelling main theme that would properly befit the dangerously exciting nature of both the movie and, by extension, of James Bond himself. After all, as future Bond concert conductor Carl Davis would later put it, quote, "The character of Bond is very inspiring, sort of the British Superman, dangerous and sexy with a lifestyle that's very glamorous. Music can convey all these qualities. It's very potent." And so Barry was hurriedly called in the hope that his thrilling orchestrations could effectively shake and stir things up, as it were. Norman later claimed that he first came up with what finally became the James Bond theme by refashioning a tune which he had earlier composed for a stage musical called A House for Mr. Beeswax to fit Dr. No instead, a decision which he explained as follows. It was originally very, very Eastern. It had a sitar and all that sort of thing. I thought there's something there. There's a good melody there, but it's too Indian. So I thought I'll split the notes, and immediately that was it. According to Barry, meanwhile, his process of expanding upon Norman's brief initial sketch of the Bond theme went as follows. I didn't see any of the film. I worked on the weekend. I'd written a twangy guitar type thing. It was almost a Bond theme. Then, of course, it breaks into a swing tempo and goes almost bebop. You know, it was like a Dizzy Gillespie lick. So I did this theme, went into the studio, recorded it, and that was it. No strings, just 5 saxes, 9 brass, solo guitar, and rhythm section. I got paid £200, and that was it. Thus, while accounts may vary as to precisely who contributed what to the explosive mix of musical ingredients that would become the iconic James Bond theme, the staggering success of the thrilling tune that had finally emerged from their combined efforts was, and still is, undeniable, creating a master formula for future Bond music that would again and again prove to be as overwhelmingly irresistible to its captivated listeners as 007 himself usually was to the captivating femme fatales that he encountered on screen. Indeed, even Monty Norman himself later agreed that, quote, I was absolutely thrilled. Whatever differences I have with John Barry, I've never said anything other than his orchestration is the definitive orchestration. Nobody has bettered it. So began a 6 decades long and counting musical and cinematic odyssey which would see James Bond music, and again by extension James Bond himself, firmly become the definitive introduction to thrilling adventure in the minds of countless legions of enthralled moviegoers over the years, with John Barry's recurring contributions to the series in particular coming to define what Bond music expert John Burlingham dubs the de facto sound of international espionage on screen. James Bond music is launched by Monty Norman, reimagined by Barry, and carried forth by multiple composers thereafter, now resonates more than ever with filmgoers and music lovers alike. 60 years after Dr. No, Bond songs and Bond themes still seem timeless, while also providing a grand overview of the directions that pop music has gone. From the ballads of the 60s to the disco of the 70s, the harder edge rock of the 80s, the rhythm and blues and electronica of the 90s, and the postmodern realm of the early 21st century. One thing is certain, James Bond will return, accompanied by music that will touch us, enthrall us, and excite us. Ian Fleming would surely be astounded. Evan David says, given the vast scope of the official Bondian musical canon alone, however, it should therefore come as no surprise that actually deciding which of the theme songs to the 25 official James Bond movies that exist as of this writing to include in this top 10, or rather top 11 for reasons which remain top secret for now, was a task that would surely daunt even the ever-resourceful 007 himself. As such, while I hope you will all enjoy this list, I have no illusions that will please every James Bond fan within the wider RTTC community as a whole, or even beyond. But before I get thrown into the hopefully metaphorical piranha tank, it should at least hopefully spark some lively debate in the comments section below. where you can please feel free to leave your Bondonian top 10s list as well. So everyone put on your tuxedos, grab your Q Branch supplied gadgets and vodka martinis, and or find a supervillain's cat to stroke. And do pay attention, 007. Right, here goes with the list proper. Oh, and please bear in mind that while I've tried to compile this list based upon how much I dig the songs themselves, rather than the movies as a whole, which is an important thing you guys need to get, to some extent the two are bound to bleed into each other given how linked they are. For the record, I normally prefer the Connery Moore Bond flicks as a rule. The more modern ones often seem to take themselves just a little too seriously for my taste, Evan David says. However, I happen to love Daniel Craig in here. So I'm sure I've heard all of these songs at least once. I don't know most of them very well. The music will not be in this video because it'll get blocked, and actually all 11 of these are going to be videos. So that will get blocked, but check out the Vimeo link below and you can follow along. Thanks again, Evan David. So let's hit it up. We're going to start with 0011. That's the way Evan David did these. It seems fitting. Goldfinger by Shirley Bassey. Taken from the third Bond movie released in 1964, this truly definitive Bond song almost literally set the musical gold standard, so to speak, for others to live up to. So much so that even if it's not a personal favorite of mine per se, it would still almost feel like sacrilege of a sort to leave it out here. After all, as James Bond expert Lee Pfeiffer once put it, in much the same way that Sgt. Pepper revolutionized the world of rock music, Goldfinger established a formula so perfect that it still works today. And this applies just as much, if not more so, to the dangerously enticing musical atmosphere so expertly evoked by a singer more linked with Bond songs than any other, namely Welsh icon and future dame Shirley Bassey. Evan David's also from Wales, FYI. By all account, however, Bassey herself had to go above and beyond to create this song's blistering finale in a slightly risque manner that James Bond himself would surely have appreciated. For according to Bond guitarist Vic Flick, John Barry got a bit upset with her because she kept cutting it off too short and running out of breath. And she said in her Welsh accent, "For goodness sakes, just a minute." And then suddenly her bra came over the top of the studio partition. She said, "Now try it again." And she got it. So let's check the video out. There you have it. Goldfinger, obviously the opening sequence of the movie. And there, Shirley's voice is tremendous. You know, it's obviously of the time, 1964. You know, it's got obviously the orchestration and more traditional sound than some of the other songs on this list. But I did enjoy just kind of warning you about Goldfinger, right, and the lyricism. The chorus, golden words you will pour in your ear, but his lies can't disguise what you fear, for a golden girl knows when he's kissed her. It's a kiss of death from Mr. Goldfinger. So as Evan David said, it's a classic song. I'm sure I've only heard it once, and that was when I watched the movie, which is probably 35 years ago whenever I watched it. Let's move on to 0010, All Time High by Rita Coolidge, taken from the 13th James Bond movie, Octopussy, released in 1983. By the way, the first Bond movie that a 12-year-old me went and saw at the movie theater, so I do know this song. And later covered by Pulp, I did not know that, amongst others. This somewhat underrated Bond song often tends to get lost amidst some of its more illustrious peers, but I, for one, have always appreciated the romantic, ethereal, yet subtly charming way in which it evokes the sweet distraction for an hour or two. It's a word in the line, or a word in the song, that a good James Bond movie can and should provide for its audience, even as its creation caused somewhat of a perhaps not so sweet distraction for lyricist Tim Rice in particular, who later remarked that getting the Bond assignment in the first place was, quote, really was a bit out of the blue. I was very surprised, to be honest. My first thought was obviously great. My second thought was, what's the film called? And when it was told Octopussy, I thought, not so great. At John Barry's suggestion, therefore, Rice then apparently came up with 6 potential alternate song titles that he could use instead, with the Bond producers eventually plumping for All Time High. But this posed its own problems for Rice, who noted that, quote, conventional love songs are the hardest things to write. And I remember thinking, I wish I had a title like Diamonds Are Forever, which sets you off on a slightly more original approach to things. In reality, however, Rice apparently kept working on the lyrics until the last minute, with Rita Coolidge, who was herself a late replacement for original proposed singer Laura Branigan. Wow. Later remarking that they hadn't been finished when she first arrived at the recording studio. This is the official music video. All right, All Time High. It's cool seeing the video. They really put it on back in '83, right, with the special effects. I mean, there was some pretty cool stuff in there to pull off back then for Bond. The song itself, Rita has a fantastic voice, right? But the orchestration in here, the instrumentation, all of it is just so well done. The brass section in here. You know, the danger of saying I'm playing a song from 1983 is that those types of songs in the mid 80s, right, can sound incredibly dated. This does not at all. I mean, it's just, And it's a classic love song, basically is what it is. So, the chorus, we're at an all-time high. We'll change all that's gone before, doing so much more than falling in love on an all-time high. We'll take on the world and win. So hold on tight, let the flight begin. But it has that soaring chorus that you got to have for a Bond movie, right? It just the grandeur of it. So really good choice at number 10. Now we're up to 009, The Living Daylights by a-ha. A band that I don't know much about. I only know 2 of their songs, but I'm doing a top 10 for them next month for another patron, so I'm going to get to know them a lot better. This is taken from the 15th James Bond movie and released in 87. This compelling tune emerged as the Bond producers sought to replicate the chart success they experienced with the theme song to the previous and Roger Moore's final Bond movie, namely Duran Duran's A View to a Kill, which is a great song, which had reached numbers 1 and 2 respectively in the US and UK singles chart upon its release 2 years earlier in 1985. As Bond expert John Burlingham puts it, the concept was, let's see if we can get a pop group that will appeal to young people that we can get on MTV and therefore help promote both this new movie and this new Bond. In this case, it was Timothy Dalton. The chosen pop group in question were to be Norwegian synth pop stars a-ha, then still at the height of their mid-80s fame, but the creative process this time was far from smooth due to ongoing friction between a-ha and veteran Bond composer John Barry, for whom this would be his 11th and final Bond soundtrack. Indeed, an exhausted Barry would later memorably liken the experience of working with a-ha to, quote, playing ping pong with 4 balls. They had an attitude which I really didn't like at all, while on the other hand, a-ha guitarist Paul Wakhtar Savoy would later claim that John Barry was a real character, and we were trying to find a balance between our world and his. I think we got there in the end, so Paul took the high road on that one. Regardless, while the resulting tune may not have been anywhere near as commercially successful as his predecessor, peaking at 5 in the UK, not charting at all in the US. That's what I say. I don't even remember this song. I, for one, have always dug it. This is the official video. The Living Daylights, there is an S on it, even though the video only showed singular. It was an okay song for me. I never heard that song. It was just okay. I mean, if they're trying to follow up on A View to a Kill, I mean, Duran Duran is a Hall of Fame group and just absolutely tremendous. Nothing against a-ha. As the song went on, it grew on me more and more, so I can see on repeated listens why it went to 5 in the UK. I like seeing the movie scenes in there. The song, there's not much to the lyrics, as there isn't on a lot of these, right? It's just, the pre-chorus, comes the morning, the headlights fade away, 100,000 people, I'm the only one they frame. I've been waiting too long for one of us to say, save the darkness, let it never fade away. Oh, the living daylights. So my point on the Rita Coolidge song, that it's timeless. This one is not necessarily timeless, being heavily, 1987 sounded, but I mean, I was a teenager in 1987, so still enjoyed it at number 9. She's back, boys and girls. 008, Diamonds Are Forever by Shirley Bassey, taken from the 7th James Bond movie and released in 1971. This utterly iconic Bond song saw the return of the equally iconic Shirley Bassey to vocal duties, once again expertly evoking a romantically jaded female persona who has been let down at least one time too many by dangerous men such as Bond. Moreover, as the song's lyricist Don Black once put it, quote, I've always thought that a Bond song should be provocative and it should be seductive. It should have the whiff of the boudoir about it, and if you can get it all in a song and make it rhyme, then you've cracked it. And Evan David says, and such is most definitely the case here. According to some, however, this approach was much to the chagrin of Bond producer Harry Saltzman, who allegedly almost got the song thrown out of the picture due to his disgust at some of its more salacious lyrical aspects. As such, this tune remains a suitably sultry, sexy swan song to Sean Connery's portrayal of 007 as his final official Bond movie. Video of its original movie title sequence is what we're going to see here, just like we did with Shirley's Goldfinger. Diamonds Are Forever. One thing I really enjoy about the Bond movies, and it's a lost art, right, is they spend a lot of time on their opening sequence, right? Even though it's just credits, there's a lot of other stuff to keep you occupied, right? They don't just mail it in as so many movies do now. I mean, it's really not even opening credit sequence nowadays. The movie just kind of kicks off because our attention span is so short. So they always did these really well. So kind of cool to see that just in the same way we saw it on Goldfinger. So it's 7 years later, but a very similar type of song, very orchestral, really well done. Shirley's voice shows off the power of it. And the theme of it is Diamonds Are Forever. She doesn't need love, right? Because the diamonds are forever. For what good will love do me? Diamonds never lie to me. For when love's gone, they'll luster on. I don't need love. For what good will love do me. And she ends with that diamonds are forever, forever, forever. Just the way the song has that grand feel to it. It feels like a James Bond song in 1971. So good choice there. Next up at the much sought after 007 mark of the top 11 James Bond songs, You Only Live Twice by Nancy Sinatra. Taken from the fifth, and Evan David says perhaps my personal all-time favorite James Bond movie, and released in 1967. The sinisterly enticing oriental sounding tune also had something of a troubled creation, this time in large part due to the frankly understandable case of nerves felt by its young singer Nancy Sinatra, who was then at the height of her mid-60s popularity following the release of her own These Boots Are Made for Walking and other hit tunes, and who also considered Bond producer Cubby Broccoli to be a lifelong family friend. As Sinatra herself would later put it, quote, You Only Live Twice was difficult in a lot of ways. The fact it was quite rangy, and I wasn't used to that. I was used to my little octave and a half. I even asked John Barry, are you sure you want me to do this? Because maybe you need Shirley Bassey. And they said, no, we want you. We want your sound. If there were bad notes, they probably just, edited it together. They didn't want to embarrass me. I tried my best. I was, 26 years old and really scared. Sinatra's instincts in this case were in fact correct, for as John Barry himself would later explain, quote, it took about, maybe 12 takes. Then when she'd gone, we literally took a piece from all these takes that we took and stuck them all together and made the one final take that went out there. It was, as we call it, a hatchet job. Regardless of these difficulties, however, the painstaking work of Barry and Sinatra in putting the final tune together clearly paid off in spades, with Sinatra herself later also claiming that while, quote, it was one of the scariest times of my whole life, it's the most beautiful of the Bond songs and it makes the most sense away from the movie. Sentiments which Evan David says, I heartily concur, and which you can judge for yourself by reacting to the video of its original, once again, movie title sequence. Nancy Sinatra, You Only Live Twice. The same sound, obviously, as Shirley Bassey's Goldfinger in a way. I mean, it's definitely got a far Eastern sound to it, but it still has the orchestra in there and just that sound, that timeless sound, that sound you got in the 60s. The song itself does stand up, as Nancy herself said, outside of the Bond narrative. You only live twice, or so it seems. One life for yourself and one for your dreams. You drift through the years and life seems tame, till one dream appears and love is its name. And love is a stranger who beckon on you. Don't think of the danger, or the stranger is gone. This dream is for you, so pay the price. Make one dream come true. You only live twice. So we get the title in there, but well done and well performed by Nancy. Now we're to number 6, a song I do know very well, Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings, taken from the 8th James Bond movie released in 1973 and later memorably covered by Guns N' Roses, which is the version I first heard, guys. Sorry, it just is. This is perhaps the most bombastically dramatic Bond song ever, and like the film it's taken from, is an epic start to a new creative era for the James Bond franchise as a whole, both in terms of welcoming a new Bond actor in the ever-smooth shape of Roger Moore, as well as adding a new, more rock-oriented element to the Bondian musical recipe in the shape of ex-Beatle Paul McCartney, with George Martin also temporarily replacing John Barry as producer. As Paul himself later put it, quote, I heard they're making a new James Bond film, and if you're the kind of writer I am, it's always one of those little ambitions. Do the Bond song. I got the idea, the fairly straightforward idea of live and let die. Okay, live and let live when you were young and your heart was an open book. They were filming in the Caribbean, and the Bond guys listened to it. They said to George Martin, quote, that's okay for the demo. When are you going to make a real record? This is the real record. Admittedly, Evan David says, admittedly, one can perhaps see how the Bond producers might have in fact thought it was a demo, given that Wings drummer Danny Sewell later claimed that, quote, it was written in, I wouldn't say 10 minutes, but half an hour. It really didn't take him long. We were up at Paul's house in St. John's Wood. He goes over to the piano, and the first thing he did was play Live and Let Die. We were all sitting around like amazed. But even if the Bond producers at first seemingly had a case of musical clothiers rivaling Bond's own infamous declaration in Goldfinger that, quote, there are some things that just aren't done, such as drinking Dom Perignon 53 above the temperature of 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just as bad as listening to the Beatles without earmuffs. Nevertheless, the true power of McCartney's explosive Bond tune ultimately could not be denied. This is a clip from a live performance on the ATV James Paul McCartney TV special in 1973. What a performance. Paul McCartney and Wings, Live and Let Die, blowing that piano up at the end. Kind of crazy there, but it's cool to see Paul back during this time. They sounded great. I don't think he was lip syncing. At first I thought no. Then in the middle of it I thought maybe. I don't think so. I looked. The guitars were at least plugged in, right? So that's what you always look for when when the electric guitars aren't plugged in, boys and girls, it's a dead giveaway. But they were. But the song itself, we were lucky enough to see Paul play this 3 years ago at the time of this film. It was so cool live. It just has a grand feel to it, right? In a different rock-oriented way, as Evan David talked about, instead of a lot of the other stuff we've had, the earlier stuff, very orchestral, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But this song actually is timeless as well. You know, the lyrics themselves, when you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let live. You know you did, you know you did, you know you did. It's kind of the famous part of the song. But this ever-changing world in which we're living makes you give in and cry. Say, live and let die. It's just, you know, it's just a soaring. There's not a lot to the lyrics, but it's just a soaring chorus in there, and a really good choice at number 6. Now at 005, we have Tomorrow Never Dies by Sheryl Crow. I don't know about placing this on the side, but I've never heard it, so I can't judge it yet. Taken from the 18th James Bond movie released in 1997, this chillingly powerful but somewhat underrated tune not only divided critics back in the day, but had already proven to be somewhat controversial even before it was released, due to the fact that, unbeknownst to each other, the studio had already apparently asked several other artists, such as Paul, Duran Duran, Mark Allman, amongst others, to submit suitable potential title songs before finally plumping for Crow's tune, much to some of the other artists' chagrin. Nevertheless, this soaring, bittersweet tune, which once again evokes the common underlying theme of the physical and psychological cost of becoming emotionally involved with a dangerous man like 007, has always been one of Evan David's personal favorite Bond songs. We're going to watch the official video. Tomorrow Never Dies, Sheryl Crow. The video was really well done. I just wasn't feeling the song. They try to do the throwback, right, more Shirley Bassey type traditional orchestral song. I just don't know that Sheryl has the chops to quite pull it off, but you know, I could see how some people would like it. The song itself, you know, it's a love song, so to speak. Darwin, I'm killed. I'm in a puddle on the floor, waiting for you to return. Oh, what a thrill! Until that day, until the world falls away, until you say there'll be no more goodbyes. I see it in your eyes. Tomorrow never dies. But then she talks about it's murder on our love affair, but you bet your life every night while you're chasing the morning light. You're not the only spy out there. It's so deadly, my dear, the power of wanting you near. So, and then she hits that chorus again. So, number 5. Next up at number 4 is probably the song I think of more than any for Bond songs, right? Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon. Taken from the 10th James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me, released in 1977. Later covered by the likes of Celine Dion and Radiohead. I'm going to see what Mr. York did with this thing. This half-boastful, half-wistful tune was originally sung by Carly Simon from the enthralled perspective of a woman hopelessly, if not helplessly, addicted to the sheer unbeatable romantic prowess of her lover, presumably 007, with lyricist Carol Bayer Sager describing its creation as follows. Marvin Hamlish and I were working on a television pilot, and he told me he had to go to London to score the Bond film. And I said, oh, I have a great title for a Bond song. He said, what's that? I said, Nobody Does It Better. He said, oh, I like that. And before we knew it, we had written the chorus. I thought if I could get the Bond title and the lyric of the song, maybe they'll let me use Nobody Does It Better. So I placed The Spy Who Loved Me in the first verse, and they liked it. It was a very big deal to be working on a Bond film when Bond was already so famous. So I took it very seriously, and I had a very strong sense of the James Bond, the character who was this debonair, sexy hero. Indeed, this tune, Evan David says, much like The Spy Who Loved Me itself, still successfully epitomizes the still thrilling but even more tongue-in-cheek atmosphere of the Roger Moore era of Bond movies, in much the same way that Goldfinger does for the Connery Bond. With Moore himself once remarking that, quote, I remember hearing the song the first time and sort of being blown away. It was a great ego trip for James Bond. Sums me up, he said. Evan David included a video here, but it has since been blocked, so I'm using a different fan tribute video. Nobody Does It Better. What a fantastic song. Carly Simon, just great musical performance. The song itself definitely sums up Bond, I think, more than anything. Verse 1, Nobody Does It Better. It makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you. Baby, you're the best. I mean, that sums up the confidence and really arrogance of 007, right? You got to have some sort of arrogance to be able to pull off all the stuff that he does. You better believe in yourself. The chorus, I wasn't looking, but somehow you found me. I tried to hide from your love light, like heaven above me. The spy who loved me. So there's where she got it in there. It's keeping all my secrets safe tonight. Really well written chorus there. And Nobody Does It Better, though sometimes I wish someone could. Nobody does it quite the way you do. Why'd you have to be so good? So great choice there at number 4. Now we're up to 003. We have All the Time in the World by Louis Armstrong. Taken from the 6th James Bond movie on Her Majesty's Secret Service and released in 1969. This beautifully poignant tune was not, in fact, the film's title song. That role was filled by a top-notch John Barry instrumental instead, but was used instead as both its closing song and as part of an earlier romantic montage between Bond and his ill-fated fiancée Tracy, played by Diana Rigg. According to composer John Barry, quote, "I just said to Cubby Broccoli, I think Louis Armstrong will be terrific in this, you know. I'd loved his music and his playing and his personality for years. So for him to say he'd do the song was fantastic. The line at the end of the book was, 'We have all the time in the world.' I thought that was a great line, so it became the song. Thus suitably inspired and with the help of ace lyricist Hal David, Barry came up with what John Burlingham dubbed a melody that was classic Barry, something wistful, something hopeful, a touch of melancholy, just right for two damaged souls finding each other, seeking a promising future, but aware of the wreckage of their past lives. It was a love song for adults who were past starry-eyed notions of romance, much like the George Lazenby starring Bond film it came from, however, and despite its historic status as one of an alien Armstrong's last recordings before his death in 1971, this tune fell into relative obscurity for decades until its fortunes were finally revived by its use in a Guinness advert in 1994. I'm telling you what, you get your song in a commercial, it can just really set it off, right? After which it was re-released and reached number 3 in the UK singles charts, a fitting tribute to a Bond song and indeed a Bond movie that have since become cult favorites for many Bond fans and critics alike. Not least myself, Evan David says. We're also looking at a fan-made tribute video for this one. We have all the time in the world, the great Louis Armstrong. That was a timeless tune, definitely a John Barry type of tune there. The orchestration, it could fit at any time. And, you know, it is just a love song. We have all the time in the world, time enough for love to unfold all the precious things love has in store. We have all the love in the world. If that's all we have, you will find we need nothing more. Every step of the way will find us with the cares of the world far behind us, right? So I think it was wise not to make this the theme song. I don't know that it necessarily would have fit, but what a fantastic song. Now we're up to number 2, You Know My Name by the great Chris Cornell. Taken from the 21st James Bond movie Casino Royale and released in 2006, the first Bond movie I ever took Trey to in the movie theaters. This murderously muscular sounding tune was deliberately crafted by composer David Arnold to suit the far more ruthlessly aggressive character of the then new regeneration of Bond by Daniel Craig compared to some of his predecessors, or as Arnold himself put it, quote, Daniel's James Bond was a very alpha male, a less sophisticated Bond than we'd had before with Pierce Brosnan. You Know My Name was written directly in response to the way that Daniel played the character. It's not a spurned lover, not about a villain. It's about James Bond saying, get out of my way. If you don't get out of my way, I'm going to make you get out of my way. As such, the sheer deadly power of this tune, so ably evoked by the equally overpowering tones of the late Chris Cornell, is once again, much like Bond himself, brutally irresistible, and once either it or he gets going, almost impossible to stop or to top, or is he? Videos of the opening titles of Casino Royale. So I also found some stuff. Cornell just talked about he got to see an early version of the movie, and he wrote the song after that. So he said it was partly inspired by the way Daniel Craig played the character, and partly by what his own personal experiences. So I'll have a little bit more on what Cornell said after this video. You Know My Name. What a powerful song. Cornell sounds great. I think he's one of the best vocalists in rock music history. He does not disappoint here. He said in that interview with the BBC that from the beginning, producers Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli wanted something different from previous Bond songs. They were pretty clear about what they didn't want, which was a song that had already been sitting around that I would just cleverly adapt to the new film, which happens quite a lot, apparently. He said they also didn't want to echo any recent Bond theme songs. And this was the first song, since we already had it on the list, All Time High, that did not have the title of the movie in the song itself. Chris said, as soon as I heard Casino Royale was the title of the movie, I definitely knew I wasn't going to have those two words in the song. And no one told me I should. I couldn't imagine fitting it into a song lyric that would come out of my mouth. I agree. I think this is definitely grittier, definitely harder hitting. I like the opening sequence, right? This opening sequence of the movie. It's fantastically done. The verse 1, if you take a life, do you know what you'll give? Odds are you won't like what it is. When the storm arrives, would you be seen with me by the merciless eyes I've deceived? And then the pre-chorus, I've seen angels fall from blinding heights, but you yourself are nothing so divine, just next in line. And then the chorus, Arm yourself because no one else here will save you. The odds will betray you, and I will replace you. You can't deny the prize. It may never fulfill you. It longs to kill you. Are you willing to die? The coldest blood runs through my veins. You know my name, which is kind of ironic, right? Because he's got a code name, 007. You don't really know his name. So I like that. Like I said, I think Chris did a fantastic job. For me, when I was young, Roger Moore was my favorite Bond. When I was young, I saw most of the Bond movies on the ABC Movie of the Week back in the 70s and early 80s. But as time went on, it became Connery, and now I put Connery and Craig kind of right here. I like them both. I like the harder edge Bond, so I really like Daniel Craig. So this one kind of inspired me to go watch this movie again because I've only ever seen it once when I saw it in the theater. And drum roll, please. Number 1, the James Bond theme by John Barry, although we're going to listen to the Moby version. Evan David says, originally taken from the very first James Bond movie, Dr. No, and featured in every Bond movie in one way, shape, or form since its first release in 1962. I finally decided that just like a seemingly dead arch-villain's henchman returning to have one last crack at dispatching 007 right before the end of a Bond movie, I simply couldn't finish its best Bond songs top 10, or rather top 11, without asking you guys to please react to this one as well. Moreover, having already alluded to the slightly complicated ins and outs of how this masterpiece of spy movie cool was created above, it only remains to note that its overall cultural impact over the decades remains more or less unsurpassed amongst its movie soundtrack peers, and to pretty much agree with film critic and Bond aficionado Jonathan Ross that, quote, the James Bond theme, I would say, pound for pound, ounce for ounce, kilogram for kilogram, whatever is the most instantly recognizable and best loved theme in the history of cinema, it's such an important part of Bond's DNA, you can't possibly do without it. I would say that another John Williams, might have a little something to say about that with the Star Wars theme, but I get the overall point. Evan David says on this occasion, however, in an attempt to avoid possible overfamiliarity on RTTC's part with John Barry's otherwise peerless original version, I would like you guys to react instead to a later version of the James Bond theme that I myself have always enjoyed, namely the remix release in 1997 by famed electronica artist Moby, who described the experience as follows, quote, I was asked to redo the James Bond theme for Tomorrow Never Dies, which is an honor, but also so challenging and daunting because you're being handed this iconic piece of music that is flawless. I tried to respect the original James Bond theme and sort of modernize it. I took the music as it was written, modified it to a different time signature, and then played the guitar and started adding on to that. I did my best. I just wanted to do it for the fun of it and for the satisfaction of being able to spend time with this iconic piece of music. We're going to look at a fan-made tribute video for number 1, the James Bond theme, Moby's remix of it. I enjoyed that. I think he did a good job with it. Obviously, the original is so iconic that's the one I'm definitely going to favor over this, but it's well done and a great video there, great fan-made video there as well. Now I go to Evan David's honorable mentions. He says it's Thunderball by Tom Jones, Moonraker by Shirley Bassey, For Your Eyes Only by Sheena Easton, Skyfall by Adele, and especially A View to a Kill by Duran Duran, and GoldenEye by Tina Turner. So now we come to my favorite tracks. And this kind of all comes down to, do you prefer the traditional orchestral versions, or do you like some of the songs that are of their time, that reflect the musical genre of their time? I guess I'm kind of a mix here. My honorable mentions are All Time High by Rita Coolidge, Diamonds Are Forever by Shirley Bassey, faves, Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings, Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon, and You Know My Name by Chris Cornell. But a wonderful list put together by Evan David. As he said at the start of this thing, let us know your favorites. Leave your top 10, or you can do top 5, whatever you want, in the comments below. I would actually have a quite different looking top 10, and that is the beauty of music. A very difficult task for Evan David to put all these songs into this list, because you're talking about 60 years of music. Usually these lists are either of an artist or a particular genre. This is all genres, 60 years of music. To go through all this and compile this list is a daunting task. Evan David did a great job. Thanks everybody for watching, and until next time, I will see you.